Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah khair for your patience. We're having some trouble today, as you may have noticed. But inshallah, we'll try to resume. And if the camera angle is a bit off, then inshallah, you can just ignore that and try to listen to the lesson. So let's ignore the camera angle and let's just focus on the verses themselves. I'm sure you have all memorized verse 13 by now, alhamdulillah. La, do not, yu'minuna, believe, they do not believe bihi, in it, wa, and qad, surely, khalat, has gone before, sunnah, the sunnah or the way, al-awwaleen, of those who came before. Okay, so they do not believe in it, though the ways of the ancients have passed away. So Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he includes in his tafsir that, we already have had the examples of the ancients gone forth, meaning the destruction wrought by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on those who rejected his messengers. That is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just as it was the sunnah of the people to not believe, unfortunately, in the messengers that were sent to them, so the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was then to annihilate those nations after they were given due warning, and the signs were sent, and they persisted in their rejection after a long period of respite that they had been given. And this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He does save His prophets in this world. He saves the believers in this world, and this is the same that will happen in the next. So the path of the ancients is the same path that the Quraysh and the people who were disbelieving in the Quran during its revelation in Mecca, they were following the same path of the ancients, and so they were literally on the path of self-destruction. And some of the nations that had been destroyed by the previous punishments, these actual locations were traversed by the Quraysh on their trade journeys. So they would actually pass through the ruins of the people that had been destroyed, yet unfortunately it would provide them no benefit whatsoever, unfortunately. Okay, let's go on to verse 14. Wa, and lo, if fatahna, we opened alayhim, upon them, baba, a door, min as-sama, from as-sama, the sky, فَظَلُّوا, so they would have remained, fihi, in it, ya'rujun, from the root words, letters ayn, ra, jim, ya'rujun, yani ascending. So literally the translation becomes, even if we open for them a gateway into the sky and they began to ascend through it. And let's read verse 15 with it because it's connected. La qalu, la, surely, qalu, they would have said, innama, indeed, sukkirat, have been bewitched, abasaruna, this is the plural of basar, is absar, and it means eyes. Absaruna, our eyes. Bal, nay, nahnu, we, qawm, a people, mashurun, that are under a spell, bewitched, under the spell of magic. So let's look at 14 and 15 together. The flowing translation, even if we open for them a gateway into the sky and they began to ascend through it, they would still say, our eyes are hallucinating. In fact, we are people bewitched. Or another translation, they would still have said, surely our eyes have been dazzled, rather we have been enchanted. And if you look at the explanation from the great Mufassirin, Mujahid, Ibn Kathir, Al-Dhahak, they all say this means our vision has been blocked. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh says in the tafsir for this means our eyesight has been taken away. And Al-Awfi, another narration from Ibn Abbas that Al-Awfi reports, this means that we were confused and under a spell. Okay, so basically we get the point, right? Even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to open up a gate into in the sky. So, right now we see the sky, but imagine if one layer was peeled away, a gate was placed in it so that you could actually ascend through that, right? They would still not take that as a sign after which they would believe. Rather, they would say that, we have been put under it a spell. Our eyes have been dazzled. And the word sukkirat in verse 15, sakran, from sukara, this is referring to a state of intoxication. So what happens when a person is intoxicated? They lose their ability to reason. They lose their mind. They lose their intellect, right? So they're saying that, we're bewitched. Our eyes have been, intoxicated, so to speak, to the point that we cannot use our mind to process this. This is not really happening. This is not really true. So if a gateway was opened for them into the sky, this is what they would say. They wouldn't say, "Oh, subhanallah, now we believe the Prophet was, speaking the truth the whole time." They wouldn't say that. Rather, what they would say is, "No, it is our eyes that have been like intoxicated, and therefore we have lost our ability to reason, and therefore we cannot conclude that this is really happening, and this is really the truth," so on and so forth, right? And Ibn Zayd's statement alludes to this. The one who is dazzled, literally, and intoxicated, سُكِّرَتْ أَبْصَارُنَا, is someone who cannot reason, right? بل نحن قوم مسحورون ليس هذا بحقيقة, as Sheikh Sadi says, that they would say that, this is not even haqiqah, this is not even true, right? بل هذا سحر, but this rather is magic. وقوم وصلت به الأهال إلى هذا الإنكار فإنهم لا مطمع فيهم ولا رجاء. And so a people, Sheikh Sadi says, that have reached this height of rejection, then we cannot hope for, any type of positive response, or, that they would enter into Iman. If you were to even show them the signs and they would still find a way to explain it away, then we really have a losing, case here. So this proves that any of the supernatural signs that they used to ask for, we've been through this in other surahs of the Quran, they would ask, cause this to happen, and, cause this sign to occur, and, also different supernatural signs that they would ask for, that even if they were to be granted to them, it would not make them believe. And this ayah is actually proof for that, so if it comes to any one of our minds that, if Allah had just given them the sign that they'd ask for, if, that supernatural miracle had occurred, they would have just believed, why didn't that happen? Well, this verse here is proof, because Allah's knowledge is infinite. It encompasses not just things that happen, but also scenarios that are hypothetical and what their outcomes would have been. So the outcome of the hypothetical scenario of Allah showing the very supernatural signs would have been what is, so of course, truthfully before us right now in verses 14 and 15. So even if they were to ascend up through that gate, they would have explained it away. Okay. Now this is something that deeply relates to us, right? And it's a scary idea that when we don't want to believe, when we don't want to do something, or we are doing something wrong, or if we don't want to accept something, there is a way to explain it away. You can explain away anything. You can justify anything, right? Even shirk can be justified, because the Quraysh did justify it, right? They said this is the way of our forefathers. So they had logic in rejecting Islam, right? And some of the Quraysh who never became Muslim, actually, they would, they even admitted that, yes, the teachings of Islam are good, but, we don't have a problem with most of the message, but how can you possibly equate me, this great leader of Quraysh, with one of the slaves that I have full control and power over, right? How could these slaves be equal to the most senior chiefs, of the tribe, of the most noble tribe? They just could not get over that. They could not accept that. And just on account of that, some of them didn't believe, even though, they didn't have a problem with most of the tenets of Islam. So there is a way to justify anything. There is a way to justify big things that are a cause of great deviation today, like the Trinity, like shirk. Millions of people justify these, right? Is that not the case? So the point is that we can justify anything with our minds, with our logic, but in the divine scheme of things, it's going to be faulty logic. It's not going to be acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the scary part. Just because we have incredibly convincing logic, just because it makes perfect sense to us and maybe the millions that happen to inhabit planet Earth at that moment, does not make it acceptable Yawm al-Qiyamah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the scary part, right? When you have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people saying, yes, the Trinity is the way to go. I mean, there are probably more than that. Same thing with shirk. Like we see the polytheism across various faiths, right, across various religions, and millions of people all agreeing to that. It doesn't mean all that combined logic is acceptable and a source of saving oneself on the day of judgment, right? So faulty logic is just as dangerous as outright rejection and falsehood of truth, right? Some people will, just reject something altogether. Some people try to justify something that is wrong, or vice versa. And sometimes the two can go together. But the point is that we fall into this faulty logic space when the fitra is corrupted. Once the fitra is corrupted, and then in the case of the mushrikeen and others who reject Tawheed, reject the tenets of Islam, that is then compounded with the outright inkar of revelation. The results are colossal. The results of a corrupted fitra compounded by rejection of revelation leads to colossal results, catastrophic results, which we have seen in the annihilation of former nations. Is that not catastrophic? It certainly is. And that's only on the plane of this dunya, on the level of this world, right? But what is to come, that catastrophe cannot even be described. That catastrophe cannot be quantified, right? The infinite, everlasting torment of the hellfire. Allah is trying to protect us from it. So in these two verses, ayat 14 and 15, that he mentioned that it was stated that the disbelievers had become so hardened against the Quran that they would not have believed even if they'd ascended the heaven and seen with their own eyes the very signs that are mentioned. Okay. Now, what are some of Allah's signs? Subhanallah. This is a very beautiful passage that's actually coming up. It's one of my favorite passages so far. And actually, I wanted to present it together, inshallah. And then we'll do what we always do, right? Just one word on verse 16 before we proceed into a more collected mentioning of the surah, of the verses. Verse 16, Maududi mentions in his tafsir, mentions the word buruj. Okay, so we're going to see the word buruj in verse 16. For those of you who are looking at it already, you see the word buruja, right? So these are referred to the large stars, as you know, you'll find in various explanations, or big stars, or a group of star constellations, as it is also translated, mansions of stars. That's a unique translation. Anyhow, these buruj, these groups of stars, these constellations, are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that he mentioned that it is not possible disruption. I'm sorry, I don't know why there was a disruption service. Okay, so that he mentions how it is not possible to pass through one sphere of the heaven into another, as each sphere of space has been fortified by invisible boundaries. Literally, the Arabic word burj, okay, the plural of that is buruj, like you have Burj Khalifa, right? So literally, the Arabic word burj means a fortified place, but it has technical other meanings as well. So here, what the correct usage, the way that we're going to be translating this, buruj or burj is constellation of stars, group of stars. Okay, so that's the translation we're going to use. Okay, verse 16. وَلَقَدْ, and surely جَعَلْنَا, we made, in as-sama, the sky, buruja. Okay, these constellations. Okay. وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ, and we have beautified it, we've beautified the sky, للناظرين, li for الناظرين, plural of ناظر, which is someone who looks. So الناظرين are those who look. Okay. So flowing translation. And now I want to give the flowing translation to you first, and then we'll take the passage together. So verse 16, we have indeed set constellations in the heavens and have beautified them for the beholders. And that's usually I give you one verse, its translation, and then we do the verse. Today, what I want to do is we're going to try something different. I want to be more holistic in approaching the Quran. I think it's a good approach to actually look at or first present a set of connected verses, just so you have more context, and then we can go back into each one individually. I hope you like the idea. So let's look at the passage that is connected and the passage that we'll try to attempt to do this week or maybe finish off next week. So the passage we're going to look at right now is 16 through 21. I'm going to give you the running translation for 16 through 21. Then we're going to come back to 16 and do what we always do, okay? 16 to 21. We have indeed set constellations in the heavens and have beautified them for the beholders and have protected them against every accursed shaitan or Satan, except him who may eavesdrop, and then a bright flame pursues him. As for the earth, we have stretched it out and have cast on it firm mountains and have caused to grow in it everything well measured. And we have provided sustenance for you on it and also for those of whom you are not the providers. There is nothing except that its treasures are with us, and we do not send it down except in a known measure. Okay, so this is the passage we're going to look at, inshallah, this week and next. So verse 16, let's do that first. We have indeed set constellations in the heavens and have beautified them for the beholders. SubhanAllah, when I was thinking about this verse, the fact of the matter is there is plenty in Allah's universe to dazzle our eyes with, SubhanAllah. There's plenty in this universe that we can dazzle our eyes with. We don't need a delusional spell to claim that our eyes have been dazzled, SubhanAllah. That's the wrong way to be dazzled, to claim being dazzled, right? Rather, SubhanAllah, the beauty that Allah has created, SubhanAllah, it's not just dazzling and something that should bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there's also a mechanism that we are not aware of that is there to ward off the shayateen who may try to listen in to what is being revealed, or to the ilm al-ghaib of the next, and that happens in the next world, right? SubhanAllah. And we'll come back to that. But for now, the constellations in the heavens are, SubhanAllah, some of the most fascinating phenomena. I mean, isn't it something that beckons your soul, that nudges you and pulls you towards your creator, SubhanAllah. One of our teachers, in explaining this verse, she said that once she had the opportunity to gaze at the stars, not just, with the naked eye in a really dark place where you can see a lot, but I believe through some very sophisticated mechanisms, some really high telescope or whatever it was. And SubhanAllah, she was so awestruck. She said that she could not say a word. She just had tears dripping down her eyes, SubhanAllah. The way she was able to observe them at that closer than she even mentioned colors. And I was not aware of this. Maybe one of you can look that up and report to us next week about, are there varying colors of the stars? SubhanAllah, I did not know this. I just heard her when I was listening to her tafsir of this, and she said, SubhanAllah, that she actually saw these colors and this close-up, clusters of stars and their, shapes and the way they just adorned the universe. And, she had no words, just tears dropping from her eyes. Because when you see those signs, what you are really seeing is, the signature of the creator, right? It's as close as you can get to him before we can actually meet him, right? It's the sign that he has sprinkled across space for us to observe and find him within ourselves through that sign, SubhanAllah. So, what is a constellation? in case some of you are wondering, we'll use the translation that says we have indeed set constellations in the heavens and have beautified them for the beholders. What is a constellation? Yes, Mahbuba tells us it's a group of stars. Thank you, Mahbuba. Yes. They are basically a collection of stars that are intricately arranged in the sky. So it's not just a group of stars, but there's an arrangement to them. And these form recognizable patterns in the night sky. And subhanAllah, they act like a celestial map for us, right? Like, people can tell their way through where the star is, and people can, identify different constellations like the Big Dipper and this and that. Just thinking about them, subhanAllah, it makes you like dreamy and contemplative, that this ever expansive universe, which is the backdrop of these constellations, and the fact that the universe is further expanding and stretching. You're just thinking about these things. Does it not make us long for our Creator? Does it not increase the longing of an iman-filled heart? That, don't we want to glimpse into the ghaib, inshallah, eventually, and want to meet our Creator, the Creator of this infinite, endless stretch of space and time. And so, subhanAllah, these stars are just those signatures, those signs, those messages that Allah has sprinkled upon space so that we can find it within ourselves to, renew our iman in Him and to long for Him and to desire to be with Him and to come closer to Him, right? SubhanAllah. So, and also when I was looking this up, subhanAllah, about constellations, I found something very fascinating that actually, if you look at the Big Dipper, you think that, all the stars that make it up are kind of like, together. But in fact, they are not as close as they appear. And the really so amazing, mind-boggling fact is that even though they seem close together, in reality, they can be light years apart. I was expecting, okay, maybe there's some distance, but subhanAllah, light years apart. So, and the example I found was that of the Big Dipper, that the stars within the Big Dipper that make up the constellation of the Big Dipper are actually scattered over a vast distance, but they still retain that recognizable shape. How many times have we actually, found the night dipper in the night sky, right? So many of us have done that with our children, and it's always fun to, to find it in the night sky, subhanAllah. So, وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ, Allah has beautified the sky for those who would, look upon it, take the time to gaze upon it. Generally, we're very cut off from nature. So it's always a good idea to try to get out and look for these things which will make us think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, stargazing can actually increase us in salihat, can actually increase us in our good deeds, because they remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He becomes more real when we look at His signs, which are real and all around us, right? So that consciousness certainly increases. And, this Quran is no sorcery, but it's supremely eloquent ayat, speak of the visible ayat that are, there for us, for our benefit. They're really there for our benefit, that we can actually increase in our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Spellbinding, really, they spellbind us. Stars are one example, because the verse is talking about them and how they are something of beautification for the earth, for the sky rather. But also, if you look upon earth, if you look upon all of various signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they really ought to spellbind us into submission to their supreme designer, right? Who just didn't create, but He made it beautiful. He could have just made it functional and whatever we needed, and He could have just created it in that way, but He just didn't create. But He created beautifully. He made it beautiful, and He made it breathtaking. One of my favorite quotes is that life is not just about the number of breaths you take, but the moments that take your breath away, right? Those breathtaking moments. So where do we experience those breathtaking moments with our Creator? It's when we transfix our gaze upon His signs, in His outer space, upon those stars. That is certainly a breathtaking experience. And to conclude this beautiful verse, I just want to mention that February 2025 happens to be an amazing month for us in terms of the night sky. There's going to be this spectacular display of planets. Several of the planets are expected to align this month. and they call this a planetary parade. And I looked this up and I found that Venus, which it's a very bright planet, right? But its brilliance is going to peak around February 14th this week, basically. Today's the 12th, I believe, yeah. So on Friday, it's going to peak. So you should look out for that, right? And what I found is that it's going to be visible in the southwest shortly after sunset, setting by approximately 9:02 p.m. So for those of you that are in the southwest, definitely take advantage of that. And the planetary parade, subhanAllah, actually happens to be coming to my locality, right, on February 28th. Unfortunately, I'm not here that day, but a rare alignment is expected to occur with Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. All are going to line up in the sky, and it's going to be visible from various locations, including North Brunswick, New Jersey, which is like basically, next to where I live. So those of you that are in the area, subhanAllah. And it's saying they're saying that the six planets are going to be visible. But Uranus, you need a telescope to observe that, right? But the others, so you can look up for further details, and please correct me if I'm off on this, but I thought that was very fascinating, subhanAllah, while we're studying how Allah has beautified the night sky. We actually get to have a special, planetary parade from the night sky for us coming up this weekend, the following, inshallah. Okay, now with that, we can go on to verse 17. Verse 17. إلا no, not إلا وحفظناها من كل شيطان رجيم. And حفظناها, حفظ, he protected. One who protects is called a hafiz. That's what when you memorize Quran is a hafiz of the Quran. They protect it, they keep it safe within their heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that honor. حفظناها, and we have protected it, referring to the sky, from kulli, each and every shaitan. Unfortunately, we know shaitan very well. Rajim, the accursed, right? So flowing translation, and have protected them against every accursed shaitan. The translation for some reason has them, but it is referring to the sky. If you look at verse 16, وَلَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا فِي السَّمَاءِ بُرُوجًا وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ وَحَفِظْنَاهَا, in the sky, and we protect the sky from every accursed shaitan. Okay, so again, that he mentions about this, that these spheres are so fortified that they're beyond the reach of every shaitan. So if you look this up, it is said that before the revelation of the Quran, the shayateen would ascend into the heavens and were able to retrieve some information of the ghaibiyat, of the ilm al-ghayb, matters of the, some speech or information. Information is probably a better word. They'll get some news, some tidbits, some information from the heavens. But before the revelation of the Quran, they were barred from entering into the heavens, okay? So that they would have no share in that whatsoever. So this is the background, and that'll help us understand Maududi's comment that these spheres are so fortified that the shayateen do not have access to those jinns. And this is, so just keep that in mind. Some people had the impression that the shayateen continue to have access to the heavens. That was before the revelation of the Quran. But here from this verse and other verses in the Quran, well, this is not the only verse that talks about this. But the Quran, states very clearly that the shayateen don't have access. They cannot go beyond a certain limit. Okay, so they don't have this unlimited power of ascension. Okay, وَحَفِظْنَاهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ رَجِيمٍ. Shaykh Sadi mentions in Tafsir of this that إِذَا إِسْتَرَقَ السَّمَعَ أَتْبَعَتْهُ الشُّهُبُ. Okay, so basically this is going to be covered in verse 18. Okay, so let's look at 18 together, which is going to clarify 17. This is the reason I wanted to group these verses together. One actually clarifies the other. So 18, illa, except man, whosoever, istaraqa. So if you're reading it separate, it's the way I read it. If you're joining it, then man istaraqa. So except the one istaraqa who steals as-sam'a, a listen, really a hearing, and a little bit, who hears something, right? Who hears something, who catches something, who steals a listening, really, literally. You know, and journalists often say this, take a listen, right? Usually when there's something, take a look. The journalists will often say this because they're handing it over to their fellow journalist. So they'll say, take a listen, right? So except for the one who steals a sama, literally, hearing or, listening, it's translated here as eavesdropping. فأتبعه, so أتبع follows who, him, yani the devil who is stealing, shihab, a flame, mubin, clear, okay, or bright. Bright is actually a better translation. Save him who may eavesdrop, and then a bright flame pursues him. Okay. So when that attempt is made by the shayateen, because they love to eavesdrop, they love to steal information, they love to get whatever information they want to get, whatever information they can from the heavens, and then they come down, give it to their fellow, shayateen or jinn, and then they spread it. And this is actually one of the ways that people think that jinns have ilm al-ghaib, because of some information that may reach them through this. But overall, the heavens are protected, except for this exception that is made in verse 18, which is that someone may eavesdrop, and then there's an immediate consequence. Okay, when that attempt to eavesdrop is made, a sure consequence immediately follows. And he mentions how when they try to eavesdrop, these shayateen and reality succeed in getting very little information. So it's not like, they are successful in obtaining a lot of information at that instance. If this happens, they get very little information, and a shihab, a flame, follows them immediately. And subhanAllah, when you think about these verses, they're, again, very fascinating verses, because they are giving us some information about the ghaib, about the unseen matters that we have no knowledge about, right? How else would we know that there are shayateen who want to listen and they're not supposed to listen, and somehow when they do listen, they steal a listen, then a flame is cast, against them. SubhanAllah, what the takeaway for us is that there's a full system in place for the preservation of the revelation of the Quran, right? These satanic forces cannot steal a listen into the Quran, into the ilm al-ghaib, right? And Quran is part of that before it's revealed. It's in the heavens, right? It's revealed from above us. So this system is in place to ensure that there are no satanic forces around to listen, to intervene in any way whatsoever, not even listening when it comes to the revelation of the Quran. Now, this may sound very strange to some of you, but unfortunately, some of our books of Sirah tell a story that once Shaitan was able to intervene in the recitation of the Quran as the Prophet ﷺ was reciting it. It's a very disturbing story, unfortunately, or fortunately. I've had to spend more time than I wanted to on it for an assignment that I had for a class I'm taking. And there are 50 different accounts of this story. But, overall, it's a weak story. The narrators are considered weak. The chains have weakness in them. So there's a whole group of scholars that dismisses the story and only accepts the Bukhari version of it, where there is no satanic intervention. But then there are other big scholars in Islam that we all highly respect, and they're huge names that have in fact accepted the story. But if we look at verses like these verses are actually a proof against any type of satanic intervention being possible when it comes to the revelation. Alhamdulillah. Excuse me. Okay, so anyhow, just putting that out there in case you come across that story. I don't want it to be like, cause of, confusion. I just wanted to let you know that is out there. You'll find it in some of our books of Sirah, not all of them, but Ibn Ishaq, for example, reports it. Ibn Hisham does not. These are books of Sirah. But anyway, the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken upon himself to preserve the Quran. like we saw in verse number 9 last week, right? إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Indeed, it is we who have sent down the dhikr, the Quran, the admonition in the Quran, and indeed we are its protectors. And that is further corroborated by verses like this, right? This verse that we're doing here right now, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the revelation, even to the point where they cannot listen to it, let alone tamper with it. Okay. For those of you who are wondering about Shihabun Mubin, right? This literally it means a fiery flame. Okay. And in Surah Safat, the same thing has been called Shihab al-Thaqib, right? Or Shihab al-Thaqib, a flame that pierces through darkness. Okay. And this may or may not necessarily be a meteor, but it is just possible that it may be some type of rays, such as cosmic rays or a stronger type of rays that we have yet to be discovered. Tafsir mentions this, which is the reason I'm sharing it. Anyhow, if the fiery flame that pursues shayateen, he says, may be taken to be a meteor, a countless number of these form a fortification around our sphere of the universe. Although the adds that scientific observations made with the help of the telescope have shown that billions of these meteors are rushing from space in a mass of rainfall. Subhanallah. So, there's so much that we can say about this process, this fortification, the buruj that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up for beautification, but they're not just there for beautification. There are also other things going on in space, and these meteors, and they serve another purpose, which is the protection of those skies, the protection of the information, the revelation, and how they're a form of warding off these shayateen. So we're just going to conclude this part with the Maududi statement that this is so strong a fortification that it can prevent shayateen from passing through any part of it. With the help of the above, one can form a mental picture of the fortified spheres, though there is no visible wall to keep distinct and separate, one sphere from the other, one heaven from the other, one part from the other. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has securely guarded them by these invisible walls, subhanAllah. Okay, let's go on to verse number 19. Verse 19. وَالْأَرْضَ, and the earth, مَدَدْنَاهَا, we have expanded it. وَأَلْقَيْنَا, and we have cast upon it, فِيهَا, in it, although upon it will be like a translation we would do in English, literally in it. Rawasiya, mountains. And ambatna, ambata is he grew. So ambatna, we grew, right? Fiha, in it. Min, from kulli, each shay, thing, mawzoon, measured. So the flowing translation for that. Okay. Sister, if you could please mute yourself, we can hear your lovely voice, which we love to hear, but just in case it is being recorded for the YouTube video. Okay, so verse 19, as for the earth, we have stretched it out and have cast on it firm mountains and have caused to grow in it everything well measured. Okay, and Ibn Abbas says, kulli shay'in mawzoon, everything well measured. He says that it means that these were grown with the predetermined proportions. SubhanAllah, amazing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the beginning of time, and of course time does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knew exactly how much of each thing he would grow. SubhanAllah. And everything is going according to that measure, according to that predetermined proportion. How many trees is the earth going to have forever? How much grass is going to grow, right? How much wheat is going to be harvested? Like, subhanAllah, mind-boggling, right? So here the earth has been spread out. If you look at the word وَالْأَرْضَ مَدَدْنَاهَا, yani we have spread it out, right? Laid it out at our service to produce for us, to bear fruit for us, that sustains us, that nourishes us, subhanAllah, And I couldn't help but think of the analogy of the earth to the mother herself, right? SubhanAllah. Amazing, subhanAllah. And you know, these things should move us. We have to be moved. We have to be awed. We have to be, starstruck, literally, when we think about the stars, when we think about the earth, right? Because they are really pointing us, they're really calling us to think about our creator. The earth, subhanAllah, that is mentioned here in this verse, the earth and its fertility, the earth and its ability to bear fruit that then becomes the blood and life in our veins. Subhanallah, amazing. Very much like our mothers, isn't it, right? Whose milk allows the blood to continually flow through us in our infancy, and whose love allows us to grow into adulthood. These are tremendous signs of the great love and mercy of the creator of both the earth and the mother, right? And all the blessings within each of those two blessings, subhanAllah. And Tafi mentioned about the growth of every kind of plant. According to a certain measure, according to a limited extent, right? Kulli, this is from the end of the verse 19, right? Min kulli shay'in mawzoon, yani according to a proportion, according to a limit, according to a predetermined proportion, right? And this is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Some of the plants that go wild and they, grow too much, like mint, I believe is one of those, right? It becomes an issue for the people, just to contain it, subhanAllah. And that's within the limit of Allah. But imagine if He had not placed any limit at all, right? So it is according to the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a limit to these things, right? According to our needs. For the generative power of every vegetable plant is so great, that He mentions, that if free growth had been allowed to even one kind of plant, it would have covered the whole surface of the earth. Yani if Allah had not placed that proportion, that predetermined proportion, if He had not willed that, subhanAllah. But it is by the design of Al-Hakim, Al-Qadir, the all-wise, the all-powerful creator, that every kind of fruit and vegetable, it's produced in a balanced measure, right? And then there is another aspect of vegetable life, he says, right? Each and every kind of it is allowed to grow only to a fixed size, subhanAllah, right? I mean, this is amazing, right? Imagine if a tomato just kept growing, right? Imagine a watermelon, which is already so huge. Imagine it just kept growing. We would not be able to benefit from it, right? Transporting it, lifting it, cutting it would become impossible, right? SubhanAllah. Unbelievable if you think about the details that Allah has taken care of and optimized for us, our nourishment and also our enjoyment, not just for sustaining us, but also for our pleasure, subhanAllah. So every fruit and vegetable, there's a fixed size, there's a fixed height, a fixed thickness, and this is proof of the fact that the Creator Himself is the one doing the prescribing. He's prescribing and willing and ordering the structure, the shape, the size, the height, the leaves, the branches, the number of each and every kind of plant, and that no plant can really go beyond its limits, subhanAllah. Amazing. We can go on and on about this, really. Okay, and also rawasiya are mentioned. So we're still in verse 19. وَأَلْقَيْنَا فِيهَا rawasiya, and we have cast up in it or upon it rawasiya, referring to the mountains. So the flowing translation for 20 would be, and we have provided sustenance for you on it, and also for those of whom you are not the providers. So we just don't provide for you, but we provide for those that you don't provide for. You don't even know about them. You don't even know about their needs. You don't even know about, what kind of nourishment they require. So, for example, certain species of fish or certain, wildlife or certain creatures that live far beneath the depths of the oceans, subhanAllah, some of them don't even intake nutrition with their mouths. Rather, they just have like these mechanisms on their skin through which they can absorb whatever nutrients they need to live, subhanAllah. So, Allah has provided for all of these. We are not the providers, for them, subhanAllah. We don't even know where they are, and we don't even know that they exist, and we don't know how they need to be fed, subhanAllah. We think it's hard sometimes to feed children when they're young, subhanAllah. We have no idea how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for His creation. And here He mentions how Allah, He created the earth with different means of provisions and livelihood of all kinds, right? All types of different types of provision that are perfect for the different types of species that we do not provide for. But Allah has enabled the earth and the seas to provide for all of His creation. And subhanAllah, because we hear of world hunger, tragically, world hunger is something that exists. Tragically, poverty is something that exists. It is not because of limited resources. That is the biggest lie we were ever told. It is because of the facade and the unequal distribution of these resources. It's because of the injustice on the part of the human beings which are in charge of the earth that we have this poverty, that we have this unequal distribution. Because Allah has created more than enough. He didn't send us to an earth that could not provide for us. In fact, if you look up the power of the earth, the ability Allah has given the earth to provide for us, it is not just enough to feed the world, but it is enough to feed the entire global population multiple times over. In fact, about 1.5 times the amount of food needed is grown, which means actually a surplus is grown, subhanAllah. And, if you think about the different types of wildlife, like we don't need 30,000 different types of edible species, right? We don't need, no one eats 30,000 different types of plants and vegetables and fruits, right? We don't need that much. We only need a few items, which is more than enough to sustain us and also to create variety and to provide all the nutrition and things that we can enjoy. But subhanAllah, Allah still created an incredibly diverse, food palette options for us. There are only about 200 that are commonly cultivated for human consumption out of all the various plant species. But I wasn't kidding. There really are 30,000 different edible plant species. Again, only 200 are commonly cultivated because, we don't need that many. But they're there. These are edible ones for human beings. So I'm not talking about the ones that are for animals and, things that they eat that we don't. Wallahu alam. If that's, subhanAllah, we're not even getting into that. But these are just 30,000 plant species that are edible for us, subhanAllah. So, just like He didn't make the night sky just like a canopy over us to fulfill the function that is required, He could have done that, right? But he didn't do just that. Rather, He made it beautiful, right? He adorned it with the skies. He adorned it with, subhanAllah, something to take our breath away, to make that experience something that brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He just didn't create the sky as a canopy, but He adorned it. Right? In the same way, He just didn't create the earth, right? He just didn't give it the ability to produce the food that we would need, subhanAllah, to sustain our bodies. But He gave us this incredible, almost, endless array of choices for, just to suit our different tastes, for His different peoples, for His different, subhanAllah, the nations that He has made. So really, when you just read these verses, if you're just doing a casual reading of Surah Al-Hijr, there's no way you can contemplate and enjoy all of these gems that are really embedded within the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And we've just, reflected a little bit about about these signs. There's so much more. And inshallah, we hope to get into more of that as we continue our journey through the Quran with Forever Preserved. Next week, inshallah, next Wednesday, we will continue with verse number 21. For today, we are going to stop here. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that we continue to have, alhamdulillah. I am trying out a new setup with Surah Al-Hijr, so I do appreciate your patience and the fact that you do stay on for 5 to 10 minutes after 4. And sometimes, we're not able to start because of those technical issues until 4:05, 4:10. So I really appreciate that patience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala write all of that in your Mizan Hasanat. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept every moment that you are here eagerly trying to learn and being patient in the process. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.